that was silly, ridiculous, a waste of time. They didn't want. That's why they were so successful. That's why they got away.
I made a living in very dangerous.
Dianne Andrews in Black and White welcomes you to our show this week. Thank you for tuning in to Dianne Andrews. We are going to be doing whistleblowers from all walks of life. People usually think about government for whistleblowers, but we also have a lot of whistleblowers in private industry. We have them in various nonprofit organizations. So we appreciate every whistleblower that comes forth. It has been very interesting. I'm interviewing up to 12 people, from Stephen Kohn, the director of the National Whistleblower Center, to air marshals, to former U.S. marshals, to Acorn 8 whistleblowers, and guardianship people whose lives have been ruined by their sisters being, quote, demised at the effort of some other organizations. And monies, which is not the most important thing, because what I've learned in doing whistleblower shows, I've done over 110 shows in the last 4.5 years, and I've done probably 50 whistleblower shows, including the Ku Klux Klan shows and all kinds of shows on people just coming forth with the truth. That people come to tell the truth. They don't come for their lives to be changed. They don't come for their lives to be committed into havoc. And that's what happens a lot. A lot of people, it's by accident. They go to their managers, they go to their supervisors, and they say, hey, this is going on. And they don't know the supervisor already knows it's going on, and then you become a leper, and you become part of retaliation. As Shay Wilkes, who I've had on my show 3 or 4 times, did at the VA in Louisiana, where people were dying 4 or 5 years ago based on rescheduling. And now they have, and I'm so happy to report this, that any veteran can go to any hospital in America, and he or she can get services. And the Trump organization did this, and they will be paid. That hospital will be paid for them. Also, like the Right to Life. I did a show with Donna Brett, who is an anchor in Baton Rouge, who was for 30 years, who has ALS. ALS is a death sentence. She is part of the Right to Life program. And that means that if I have a terminal disease in this country, I can go to any clinic in the world, and the government will pay for my experimental drug. So we want to thank our whistleblowers. We want to thank the government for all things they have done, past and present, to help whistleblowers. And we want to thank you, fellow Americans, for out there listening to this. So let's get on and let's get started with these stories that are heart-wrenching that the whistleblowers have for us today. Thanks for joining us with Dianne Andrews in Black and White here at the 8th Whistleblowers Summit, and it's my 4th time being here and the 2nd time doing shows here in Washington, D.C. We're in the Dirksen building, and with me I'm very proud to have attorney Stephen Kohn with us. He is the chairman of the board of the National Whistleblower Center here in Washington, D.C. He is an advocate for whistleblowers to tell them how to protect themselves, what steps to take, and he's just written his 8th book on whistleblowing, which is the Whistleblower's Handbook. Where can I get this book, Stephen?
Well, the best place to get it is from the National Whistleblower Center, because then the proceeds go to the center, and that's whistleblowers with an S.org.
Well, tell us, we're so happy. Thanks for joining us today at Dianne Andrews in Black and White. How did you get into whistleblowing, and how many years has it been that you've been helping with that?
When I was a law clerk in college back in 1982, I took a clerkship doing whistleblowing, and it blew me out. I saw how powerful it was, how effective it was, but guess what? I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even hear the word. But when I graduated law school...
even when you write whistleblowers, when you type it, it comes that it's misspelled. They want to break it up as to 2 words.
Believe me, it was like, what? But in 84, I started working full-time representing whistleblowers, mostly at atomic energy plants, big corporations, and I've been doing it ever since. and it's been
So
extremely
you
rewarding.
made your entire career on
Entire-
helping
it's all we do.
whistleblowers and
We've
guiding
learned-
them
yeah.
through the processes.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's the handbook is all about that because it takes all that experience,
Mm-hmm.
puts it into this book, and says, okay, if you're a whistleblower,
Mm-hmm.
how do you do it? How do you do it that you don't get fired?
Mm-hmm.
How can you remain anonymous? How can you collect a reward?
Yeah.
Like, what's the way to do it? Because there's a lot of bad ways to blow the
Yeah.
whistle that you will be
Retaliation.
destroyed.
Yes.
So the key is to blow the whistle in the most effective way, accomplish your goals, protect yourself.
And people, I think, tend to think that whistleblowing is mostly the government. And that's not, it's not only the government by any means
No.
that we do whistleblowing on, like you mentioned, atomic energy plants.
The majority of whistleblowers are in the private sector.
Right.
We have great laws on that. We have laws covering the entire publicly traded economy, tax fraud, money laundering, fraud with government contractors, and these are some of the best whistleblower laws, the ones you really want to use.
And I guess people would really realize about the tobacco industry when the guy, the doctor, I don't remember his name, Wegland, whistleblower on the tobacco industries, what was going on there.
That's an example. You
Right,
had
a
Sharon
private
Watkins,
industry.
who spoke today
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Enron and
Yes,
securities.
yeah.
You had Gene Ross on securities, tobacco, but mark my word, we have it on secret bank accounts,
Mm-hmm.
we have it on illegal money laundering, we have it on foreign bribery. We have a lot of good whistleblowers.
What's his last name?
Birkenfeld.
Birkenfeld. He received 30 million,
No.
was it 30? How much?
No, let's just be
Yeah, how much?
straight.
Okay.
$104 million reward.
But he spent how many years in jail?
3.
So you think it was worth it? 30-some thousand every year. You take it. You take it.
Now, no. Well, what happened was, it's just shocking.
Yeah, this story, yeah, I'd like to
It's
hear.
shocking.
Yeah.
When he blew the whistle, he did it the wrong way.
It was on the banking industry,
It's-
international
okay,
banking?
He blew the whistle on UBS, at the time the largest bank in the world, out of Switzerland, that had $20 billion in illegal U.S. accounts. He had the information. He decided to blow the whistle on it. So what did he do?
What do you mean illegal U.S. accounts?
So
What does that mean,
so
Stephen?
U.S. citizens would put an account in Switzerland.
Oh.
They would hide their identity, not pay tax,
Yeah.
and sometimes that money was illegally obtained.
So they were hiding money, basically.
Yeah, stashing it, engaging in money laundering.
And this USB knew, the bank knew.
They promoted it.
Okay.
They actually hired bankers to enter the United States to get people to transfer their money into illegal secret accounts.
Okay.
Okay? So
What was Brad's position? How did
He was a
find it?
banker.
I know, but how did he find it? He just somebody
that
had
was his
somebody's
job.
account.
No,
Oh, okay.
his job was to go to America, find rich
Because
people.
he is American.
Yeah, find rich people and get them to stash their money in Switzerland in violation of federal law. So Birkenfeld's the perfect example of you have to know how to blow the whistle. He went to the Justice Department, told them what was going on. They said, great, you just admitted to felonies, we'll arrest you.
Instead of trying to work a
Well,
deal, right?
No, forget a deal.
Oh, no deal?
Forget a
Okay.
deal. We don't need a deal.
Okay.
There was another office called the IRS Office of the Whistleblower. Confidentiality, monetary rewards, protection. Had he just gone to that office, he never would have went to prison.
So if he had had
Period.
your book, he would have known where to go.
That's right. And we took the case over. After he pled guilty, after the whole thing was a disaster,
Yeah.
we took his information, we went to the IRS Office of the Whistleblower, we presented it to them. UBS was prosecuted. They had to pay a $780 million fine. They had to turn over thousands of names of U.S. taxpayers. The United States government would end up collecting billions. And the IRS gave him the reward
Of all
of
of that.
$104 million.
Is that like a key town where you get
It's
a
the same
percentage
thing,
of what's
it's a
collected?
mandatory
Yeah.
percentage.
Uh-huh.
So that $104 million only represents how powerful his disclosures were. Taxpayers pay nothing. It all comes from the sanction that his information triggered. UBS paid the fine, he got his percentage. And it's just miraculous. It was a massive fraud case.
Is that the largest whistleblower
Yeah.
reward ever?
Yeah, so in terms of an individual
Yeah.
getting a reward, that is the largest. However, last year, the United States government paid numerous whistleblowers rewards, over $800 million.
$800 million.
Paid to whistleblowers.
Together.
Under the IRS,
Yeah.
under government contracting, under securities fraud, under commodities fraud, under Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. These are very powerful effective laws.
And it seems, as we had Senator Grassley, who's always supported whistleblowers, we had Ron Johnson, we have Inspector General Horowitz here. I mean, it's
And
a
Senator
very,
Wyden, yes.
Senator Whiting, and it's a very powerful and getting more powerful, it seems, and needed.
Yeah. So our goal is to keep it bipartisan. Corruption, bribery, tax fraud should never be a partisan issue. Does it matter if you're Democrat, Republican, if
No.
you're cheating?
Yeah, it doesn't. Let me ask you this question. I have heard of some people who may say some people are doing some things, and I was in healthcare for a while, and I've seen that happen where they're vengeful and they're mad with somebody, mad with the boss, mad with the company,
Yeah.
they get fired, and they call in or they make up false information while they're there because they're planning to do this against the company retaliation because they know they're about to get fired, and it's not really true. What happens to the person who has the government spend all this money and investigating a circumstance that's not even true? What does anything
Okay, so
happen?
first off, that's extremely rare.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And the people who've studied it say it really doesn't happen.
Okay.
But here's
Saying
the
it.
difference between these reward laws and, say, someone just blowing steam and coming up with
Right.
garbage. You only can win if the information you turn in is sufficient to justify a successful prosecution in court. So they may settle the case out, they may plead guilty, but when the government examines your evidence, it has to be admissible and it has to be beyond reasonable doubt that you can prove that fraud. So this drives people with high quality information into these programs. The prosecutors, believe me, and we and anyone looking at it can look at a disclosure. If they don't have the evidence, you can figure that out pretty darn quick.
It's not going anywhere.
If it's just, I saw it, well,
Yeah.
where's the emails?
Right.
Where's the documents? You know
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
There's lots of cases.
Right.
And if you don't have the juice, they'll go pick up someone else.
So what would you like to leave to our audience,
Know
Attorney?
your rights.
No, you're right.
Period. If you see wrongdoing, learn how to make a proper disclosure before you tell anyone.
Now, the National Whistleblower Center, they can come there free and,
Yes,
and get...
we
and
have
get-
a free program that can network people to hundreds of lawyers. We also look at the cases ourselves. I'm also a private lawyer, and we look at cases also.
Well, thank you for being with us
Thank
here
you.
at Dianne Andrews in Black and White.
Thank you.
you.
Excuse me, are you Dianne Andrews?
Yes, I am.
I'm Darius. I'm here to attend your leadership speech.
Oh, thank you for coming. That's wonderful.
I just bought one of your books.
Oh, thank you. Third Man Out. That was my first book. I have 4 now. What's your major? You're in college, right?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you majoring in?
Construction management.
I tell you, then this leadership management speech that I'm going to do will do you a lot of good.
Well, I always watch your show.
Oh, good. I'm on television and YouTube. I appreciate you watching. Are you headed to the event right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Come on, let's walk together and I can teach you and tell you some things about leadership and management.
Perfect.
Come on, let's go. Thanks for joining Dianne Andrews in Black and White. I am here again at the National Whistleblower Summit in Washington, D.C. This is the 8th event for the Whistleblower Summit, and this is my 4th time being here. In 1777, which is really good to know, that they started whistleblowing even before we had a constitution. So we know the founders of this country always wanted people to come forth with injustice so we can try to make things right in the United States. When I was at IBM, we had something called Open Door. They didn't have whistleblowing. You could go to the president of the company with any problem on any manager that you had, and that kept retaliation from happening at IBM. I started off my career, I'm a mathematics major, and I started off programming on the space shuttle, and I've gone on to several other things. But with me today, I have a whistleblower, an investigative reporter, so she's a journalist, who has decided to not be in journalism anymore because of the story she's going to tell you today on guardianship. Being from healthcare is my last profession, she's going to talk about some of the bad things that go along in healthcare. Thanks for being with me, Gretchen Hammond, today.
Nice to meet you. Hi, thank you so very, very much. I started a self-funded freelance investigation into the Oakland County Probate Court in Detroit to determine whether the abuse of Michigan's most vulnerable, including elders and people with developmental disabilities, was systemic. And I began this story with the support and a letter of intent from the Detroit Free Press. I gained a team of 3 researchers and a forensic CPAs, and we began our work examining 2,278 different court cases filed at that court. We determined a number of systemic problems involving 4 public administrators acting as guardians and conservators, involving 4 judges, and covered up by successive attorneys general for the past 30 years. These issues included petitions for guardianship that were fraudulently filed with no medical evidence.
Gretchen, let's first start off talking about what guardianship really is. For our audience out there, they might not understand what guardianship really means.
Well, a lot of people don't. Guardianship is basically a system that was created by Henry III in the United Kingdom in about 1272, where he decided to take control of the estates of, quote, lunatics and idiots. Now, obviously the verbiage has changed, but it was exported over to the United States, where the principle has remained.
Are you from Europe? I hear the accent.
Yeah,
okay,
Manchester.
yeah.
Well, but the principle has remained basically the same, that if someone is deemed incompetent or legally incompetent, as they call it, or incapable of making their own decisions, they are assigned a guardian, someone who can make those decisions for them. That is the nice way of putting it. The more realistic way of putting it is that individual, American citizen, innocent, without due process, gives up all of their fundamental, every single one of their constitutional rights.
Who deems them mentally incompetent or lunatic, as they used to say in England?
A probate judge or family court judge.
But does he have to first have a psychologist or psychiatrist do a mental status on them, a mental evaluation?
Depending on the state, yes. In Michigan, where I've been conducting my investigation, certainly that is part of statute. However, the judges in Michigan, the probate judges, are not following statute. So what we were getting were people who were placed into guardianship with no medical evidence presented, either in written form or in testimonial form. And all of these people, every single one of the people we examined in 2,278 different cases that were filed by Adult Protective Services, Senior Care.
What year was that again?
Between about 1990 and 2018, we looked at 2,278 different cases.
2,278?
Yes. Belonging to 4 public administrators, all wards of public administrators. And 70% of the time, these people didn't even know they'd been placed under guardianship when they were placed. They weren't even at the hearing when they were placed under guardianship.
But they lost their house.
They lost their home.
All their good possessions, all their goods.
Well, they lost their home. They were moved out of their home 98% of the time as soon as guardianship had been declared on them. They, depending on what their incomes were when they were placed under guardianship. For example, Billy Garner, who was a World War II vet, survived Normandy. He was placed under guardianship in 2016. He had $124,000 saved when he was placed under guardianship. 1 year of the guardianship of a public administrator named John Munger, and all he had left was $4,000.
What about their family? Are they picking people? Do you think it's a system to pick people who don't have people who can help them defend themselves? Since most of these people, I assume, are older than 65?
Actually, no. We found guardianships from people aged from 19 to 95 of all racial, cultural, social backgrounds.
What does a 19-year-old have as far as goods?
Developmentally disabled people.
No. What earthly goods do they have that they're looking for?
Nothing, but what the guardian would take would be their Social Security income. And they would place them in a long-term facility and then apply for Medicaid benefits. So
who gets the Medicaid benefits? The guardian.
Yeah. So it was a win-win. The guardian got $83 per month per ward. So you're talking about guardians that have well over 500-600 wards, and they're getting $83 per month per ward.
For doing nothing.
Well, supposedly.
What do they do? They take care of them.
If you look at, we looked at their annual accounting, and they would charge these wards. They would charge the wards $10 to receive a phone call, and for a voice message to be left. They would charge them $345 to $490 for a 1-hour court appearance.
So they have a facility, a home that they keep these children or older people in.
Numerous facilities, long-term care facilities, assisted living facilities. We also found a network of unlicensed adult foster care facilities. They're like facilities that are based out of homes that look like an ordinary family home, but when you go inside, you've got 9 or 10 people living in a 2 or 3 bedroom home.
It's almost like foster care. Some of it could look like where you care for them, for the children. But I know it's not the same.
But the conditions are absolutely deplorable. I mean, mold climbing up the walls, people sleeping on bedbug-infested mattresses. We found women who were sitting in a home where someone had padlocked the refrigerator shut, so they couldn't get food.
So they're starving, some of them also.
Yeah, we spoke to 9 people who were living in one home in Pontiac, Michigan, which is where the court's located, and they had no landline in the phone. And I said, well, what are you supposed to do in the case of emergency if a fire breaks out? And they said, we've been told that we had to jump out of the windows.
Is this a 2-story facility?
2-story facility.
And just jump out.
Jump out of the windows. We'll get out the front door.
Let's get to the point, too, Gretchen, because I heard your speech yesterday here at the Whistleblowers in D.C. You'll excuse some of the noise that you hear in the background because we are in the Dirksen building, for the Senate Dirksen building, just for people out in the audience. So let's talk a couple of more minutes and try to wrap it up on exactly what you saw and what made you want to get out of journalism as a result of this corruption.
Well, at the time I began my investigation, I had a letter of intent from the Detroit Free Press, which is a large newspaper in that area.
Right.
One of the biggest in the state.
Yes, certainly. A lot on the water crisis in Michigan, in Flint.
And in January, a new Attorney General had come in, Dana Nessel. In late February, my team and I presented her with our findings and asked for comment. She instead requested that we have a meeting with her staff. We met with her staff. We presented our findings. And they let us know that they weren't going to do anything immediate. They asked me for a couple of cases. I said that's not systemic, so, and then I found out that she was organizing an elder abuse task force. And there was going to be a press conference on March 25th. I asked to attend that press conference. I was refused. And then the Attorney General's communications director called my editor at the Detroit Free Press and said, we'd rather Gretchen didn't go because this isn't going to be about guardianship. And the Free Press agreed and texted me and let me know that, no, we're not going to let you go to that press conference.
So you think it was a conspiracy to keep you out because of what you knew?
Obviously, I was going to ask questions about Oakland County and my findings about Oakland County. They didn't want me to do it. And
Oakland County is what city is that?
Yeah, well, that's part of the Detroit area.
Okay.
The court that I was examining.
Yeah.
And obviously, they didn't want me to do it. They didn't want me to ask questions. The topic of guardianship came up at the press conference, but I wasn't allowed to be there. What happened basically is that a newspaper had sided with a public official over its own journalist.
You mentioned 4 people, probate judges, when we first started.
Probate judges and 4 public administrators. Yeah.
So do you believe they are in a conspiracy together and they're making money off this corrupt system?
I think they are definitely making money. They have mortgaged and remortgaged their homes and paid them off in 3 years periods.
You all went into their backgrounds,
yeah, went into their backgrounds. Yeah, they're making money hand over fist. And as for the Attorney General and the present governor, we discovered campaign contributions that were very, very significant from one of the judges to both these individuals.
Well, I hope you decide to stay in journalism. I'd like to see you stay. But we've heard this over and over here at the Whistleblower Summit. This is not a one standalone case. This is all over the country. I did a show last year with Yolanda Bell also on guardianship. So let's keep on, and we're going to keep on pursuing this issue, and hopefully I'll see you here next year, and you would have looked at another state. Thank you so much, Gretchen. Thank you. Welcome back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White. I'm here with an old friend of mine from last year. He was on my show. If you keep up with Dianne Andrews, you remember Frank Vetro. We're going to talk a little summary of what his whistleblowing was about last year and what has happened since last year here at the 8th Summit here in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being back with me, Frank.
Pleasure.
Good to see you again.
Pleasure, Dianne. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you. So let's talk about where you were last year a little bit. Let's give them a little summary. People who are bad and don't watch Dianne Andrews in Black and White.
Shame on you.
And where you are today.
Sure. So last year was my first appearance at the Whistleblower Summit. In a nutshell, I was a young, it's about going on, sadly, 14 years now ago, where I was retaliated against on three separate occasions, actually. Initially, what set off my downward spiral was I reported endangering the welfare of a student.
Yeah, because you were a principal.
I was a high school principal, in Hamptons, on Long Island.
Yeah.
And I reported child abuse in an educational setting.
Yeah.
And I was retaliated against, lost my career. Compounding that with the fact after that happened, as my life was dangling, my career was dangling by a thread, I uncovered severe racial discrimination, hiring practices in my former school district.
Yeah, I remember what you said. They said about the black people who were interviewing.
Yeah, exactly. So, wrote the book Standing Up Principal, started my show, met my partner now, Kathy Cole.
Who will be on in a few minutes,
That's correct. She started Whistleblower Productions. I'm partners with her in that. And since the summit last year, a lot of things happened. I'm finally going to go to trial. I'm awaiting trial against the Suffolk County Police Department.
Because they even put you in jail, if I remember correctly.
They threw me in Riverhead Jail, called me a terrorist.
How long were you there in that prison, in jail?
Not too long. It was just under a week. Wasn't too long.
Hey, long enough, though, right? Too long.
5 minutes is long enough.
You're right.
Exactly
You're right. Yeah.
So finally, 14 years later, I'm going to go to trial against the Suffolk County Police Department for their defamation of my character and whatnot. Lost my
Can you
career.
really sue the police department? Yeah, I know you can sue, but can you win? Has anyone ever won?
Everybody says I couldn't get them to trial. I did it myself without an attorney.
Really?
I did it all myself. They said
How'd you do
can't
it?
do it. I fought for my
Perseverance.
life.
Yeah,
I fought for my life, and I knew the facts.
Yeah.
And the judge didn't like that they destroyed evidence that the judge ordered them to.
You can
It's
prove
one thing
they
to
did
screw
it.
over a civilian. Now you're going to screw over a judge, too.
Right.
So I'm going to go to trial against them.
Hopefully you get that judge who's already mad with them.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I sure hope so. So we'll see what happens at the trial. They said I couldn't get there. It's still impossible. We know how it goes with the immunity and all that. But hey, for a case that you can't win, I like it.
Let's talk about the documentary.
Sure.
That you and Kathy Cole looked at.
Exactly. We had the documentary last year, as you know. That's how we met. And there was some, won't get into details, some controversy after.
Always, right?
After its success, because it was pretty good, and there was some controversy regarding ownership and the people we worked with to get it done. So we decided, hey, we're the whistleblowers. We know what we're doing. Right. And Kathy Cole, with a very talented son now, who we have directing for us.
And it's her daughter still. I remember she had done
Molly,
some.
her whole family's so talented. So they're all involved, and we decided, you know what? We have the information. We're the whistleblowers. We'll do it ourselves, because there were some things left out of that documentary that we really needed in to get our message across.
The way it stands now is you cannot release that documentary right now, right? It's in legal, tied up in legal affairs right now?
Yes, the completed one, but all the footage. Yeah. Incomplete stuff we can.
You still have.
Yeah.
You can take the raw and make it into what you want it to be.
And plus, we just make new.
What's the name of it?
Plus
Going to be? Do you know?
It's Whistleblowers. It's Whistleblowers.
Just Whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we made new raw footage. It's our stuff.
Right.
So
right.
we got.
It's your lives.
So
you know
we
it.
we redid it, and because of some political reasons and personal reasons, the people we worked with didn't want to include other stuff that we needed included to get a message across. And that's why I tell people, wait till you see this year's documentary, which is going to go on tomorrow.
Oh, you all
I hope you'll be there
okay.
at
Yeah, I'll be there.
11 o'clock. And,
oh, yeah.
And the discrimination that we were talking about and you knew last year, which wasn't included in the old documentary, what happened, wait till you see this documentary and the racial discrimination, the hiring practices that are going on in school districts in Long Island, I'm sure everywhere.
Probably everywhere.
I haven't uncovered, and the footage that we included, and with all the other stories, the footage is it's going to make your hair stand up.
So I'll see that documentary tomorrow. That'll be great.
Thanks
for being with me again, Frank. And
it.
next year
Great
we'll get you. Good to see you too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.